And so I was doing hour of the cardio, an hour of lifting, another hour of cardio, and I'm just literally killing myself.
Yeah.
And then get up the next morning, get on the scale, and I'm up 3 pounds, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Hey guys, it's Cassey.
And Lisa.
And welcome to the Sheroic Podcast. Today we have Danny J.
Welcome, Danny.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, Danny, we've known each other for how long now?
Like since 2011?
Oh my gosh, yeah, 2000. That's 6 years ago. And
it feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does, because it was a really different life back then. And we're going to get into that. But just so I want to introduce you to the audience, Danny J, it was a former figure competitor, is that right?
Yeah, figure and bikini.
And bikini competitor. And you won a lot of these competitions. Yep. And then also she ran one of the biggest fitness communities, the Sweaty Betties.
Yep.
I remember that on Facebook and also on your blog. And now you are doing speaking engagements and helping girls deal with body image and self-confidence and things like that, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and of course there's a lot more that you do. That was just a little brief intro.
It's all good. Yeah, totally. It's all good.
Oh my gosh. Do you want to tell everyone how we first met?
Like, I think we might have met on Twitter initially.
Okay.
I'm thinking. And I know that we were maybe tweeting or somehow we talked, and I wanted to, actually talk to you. I know I was at Aubrey's house, so I had a business partner in the Sweaty Betties, and I don't know if we Skyped or something, but I know we had a face-to-face on the computer.
Yeah, we did. And I didn't even know you. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't even know her. I invited her to sleep over at my house.
Wow.
With my parents. It was the weirdest thing. And I somehow really trusted you. I was like, yeah, it's going to be cool. You've been a crazy.
I was, but
luckily you weren't.
just a different kind of crazy. Yeah, so then we started talking. You had your fitness competition. I flew out to San Francisco, stayed at your parents' house.
You flew out to see my first fitness and only fitness competition. And those were interesting times because you realized that I was doing something that was not okay.
Yeah, I remember being so mad at your trainer. But I just, we could go into that, but that's how it kind of all started.
That is
Let's go into it.
Yeah, let's go in. I think everyone's like,
deep.
what? I just remember my trainer making me work out 4 hours a day. Weightlifting, cardio, HIIT, running, and then eating nearly 1,000 calories.
The thing that made me flip out was you said it was one of the last days, and I think we were on the phone. Maybe it was before I got there.
Yeah.
And your weight was dropping, or maybe it wasn't. And he said you couldn't eat lettuce anymore because it had too much carbs. And I was like,
whoa.
lettuce? I'm like, I'm going to flip out on this guy. And I remember he was at the show, and I'm like, I can't even talk to him. I was so mad.
Yeah.
I just sat there, and we went to your mom's house, and he was there, and I was just like, I wanted to just scream, so I just wouldn't talk to him. And I know you were just so polite, and he was your trainer, and I was just like,
why were you mad?
Because I knew he was hurting my friend.
Okay, so you knew it was ridiculous.
Yes.
And
I should have known
listening to
better. Yes, I should have known better, but I didn't know better because I wanted to be a good student. I hired him, and I was like, he's going to show me how to cut down for this competition, so I'm just going to listen to everything he says. He's a professional, probably knows what he's doing.
Yep.
Clearly not, because afterwards I had some metabolic damage, which I know you had too.
And that's the big thing, right? Is you hire somebody, you think that they know better. Even when you know your own body and you know nutrition and you know all these things, you think, well, maybe there's something I don't know, and I'm going to listen. And that's kind of how I got into trouble too. And so I understood why you were doing it. And at the same time, I was like, there's a better way. Or just the fact that he said lettuce had too much carbs, I'm like, no, he's just an idiot.
I remember when he told me that at his training studio, I was like, can we just look up the nutrition facts right now? And so he brought out his little almanac type thing. And then I went under lettuce, and it wasn't carbolicious. And he's like, look, it has a lot of carbs. You need to be eating more meat or something like that, and egg whites. And I was like, only one more day.
Yeah, luckily it was at the end, but I was just like,
but what do you do though, right? Because you think he's an expert.
Right.
You get so much information. So I know what you're saying, because you've got so much knowledge, you know now that's crazy.
Right.
But you've got all these young girls out there right now that's inundated with information.
Yeah.
One person saying one thing, go vegan. The other person saying eat meat. The other person saying low carb. The other one saying paleo. Like, what do you do?
I mean, this is the thing. Unfortunately, I see a lot of girls have to get hurt, so to speak, or get sick before they find real answers. But this is the problem, because they go searching for the next one and the next one, and they're looking for these gurus. And honestly, you have to learn to listen and trust your own body.
Yep.
And that is so hard when we're in this noisy place of everyone saying they know it's right, and there's if it fits your macros, and then there's like paleo and vegan, and there's so many things, and you just think there's the one size fits all, and it's hard, it's noisy. But trusting yourself it takes practice. And when you don't know and you're new and you're like looking at these cover models and you just want this physique, you're just going, tell me how they did it, I'm gonna follow what they did. And then you just end up, you just don't see the aftermath. That's the thing. If people would see the aftermath, maybe they would choose a different way.
Right.
So can you explain to everyone listening what a bikini or physique competition is, and like kind of how you were in that world and what happened afterwards, like your story?
So I got into personal training, and there's a whole other story behind that, how I got into training. But I got into training, and you kind of feel like you have to have a certain look to be a trainer. So I got really wanting to like make sure I looked fit and lean, like looked trainer worthy. So if somebody looked at me, they're like, oh yeah, she's good. And so I remember people at the gym started asking me, do you compete? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, compete in what? So I had enough people asking me that I started to like research, and I saw that there were these competitions, like physique competitions. And I thought that I was like, I'm honored that they think I look like that. I would love to look like that, but I don't. So I started digging into it, and I looked up Monica Brandt. At the time, she was like a big, famous bikini fitness competitor. And I looked up her coach, and I remember thinking, gosh, I wish I could work with him, but he's in California and I'm in Las Vegas. And then I saw he did online coaching. And I thought, I don't know how this works, but I emailed. And I got set up with this guy, and we decided on a competition date, and I started to just follow the plan. And so I kind of just got swept into this industry, and I just became obsessed with like going online and looking at the competition results and comparing people's pictures. And it becomes this one, I think what it does teaches you to just be really judgmental. Because you're judging everybody, and you're picking apart people's bodies, and you're picking apart your own body. And I think that's damaging in itself. But I started to do this, and I thought in my head that I didn't think it was damaging. I thought it was just very analytical. Like, okay, your glutes need to be fixed, or your shoulders need to be this. And I thought I could look at it from a very analytical standpoint. But honestly, a lot of it you start to internalize. You start to think, well, somebody's better than me because their shoulders are bigger, or their glutes are tighter, or they're leaner than me. And you start to really get wrapped up in this like world, and your self-worth starts to be based on how you look and how you appear to other people. Because now you're not just judging yourself, you're letting other people judge you too. So I did my first figure competition. I placed in the top 5. So I was like, ooh, now I want to win. Now I want to be a pro. So then it just became like this, go to the next show, go to the next show, go to the next show, try to get better. And I wanted to inspire people. I just didn't know how to go about it. And I thought that I was doing that. I thought that by getting really lean and having a 6-pack and like looking the part would be inspiring. I think it inspired some, but more than anything, it attracted a bunch of weird dudes.
Really?
Yeah. And like and that's actually eventually how Sweaty Betties came about. Was I would just get all these emails from guys and like fetishy kind of muscle fetish people. And I used to even get mad. I'm like, God, these guys are such perverts. Well, as soon as I stopped posting those kind of pictures, I stopped getting those messages. Surprise,
enough,
surprise.
yeah.
So I didn't realize that I was attracting this as well. But yeah, the scene I was really caught up in, and what happened after I competed about 4 years
4 years like straight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like did so many shows.
How would you diet down for a show, and how would you work out for one? Just like take us through that.
So, I mean, it was very regimented. I remember I'd eat like on the clock. So I'd eat at 7, 10, 1, 4, 7.
Wow.
And so I just remember every 3 hours I had a meal plan. Like my paper was with me and my coach would tell me exactly what to eat. I wouldn't vary off of that. Everything was weighed and measured. So if it was a food scale, it was like measured in a cup or a teaspoon or counted. Like almonds, I would have 10 almonds. Like, how silly is this?
I used to do that too.
Yeah, like you count your almonds. Everything was weighed and measured. So it was like this many ounces, this many. And so I remember every single meal was very meticulously calculated. And this was like 4 years straight of this.
Seems like it became an obsession.
Yeah. And it also looking back, I'm like, who has time for that? I don't know. I don't have enough time to weigh everything that goes into my mouth. But it was very meticulous, very timed. Everything was around the clock and also revolved around food in my mind.
Right.
So it was constantly like, okay, when's your next meal? You're 1.5 hours in, now you're hungry again. I'm like, I got to wait till 1 o'clock. You know, it's not time to eat yet. So my meals were very much the same. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of variation. It's oatmeal and egg whites, asparagus, chicken, almonds, peanut butter. You know, there was just things in different amounts, but it was basically the same stuff.
For 4 years.
For 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even tell you, and I wasn't big on cheat meals or anything. I felt like very maybe self-righteous in my discipline. Like you start to feel like other people will come up to you and go, man, I wish I could do that. And so you start to have this like self-righteousness of like, I can do things other people can't do. Or you think too, like, this is what champions do. This is what winners do. You know, you don't go to the Olympics without sacrifice. So you start to convince yourself that you're sacrificing because of something greater. So you're not thinking you're hurting yourself. You're thinking, I'm just trying to get to an end goal, and not everybody can do this because not everybody wants it as bad.
Right.
So I think that I have a very driven mentality and I want to be the best. And so that worked for me and against me because that also made me skip cheat meals that I probably should have taken that would have helped me. But instead I would just go, I don't need a cheat meal because I feel fine. Where I probably should have taken one or had one just to give my body a break.
Yeah.
But I just skipped it because I could, because I had better discipline, or whatever it was, you know. So I think there's certain people that are more susceptible to, one, doing the competitions, and two, getting hurt because they get that rush or that feeling of they are doing something that not other people can do, or they just want to be better, they want to be good. And that driven personality is great, but it can also lead you down a bad path.
I agree, and that's kind of what happened with me too.
Yeah.
So then what made you want to stop competing? And you wrote an amazing blog post about this, by the way. Where can they find that blog post?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'll have to find it. I'll give it to you for show notes.
Yeah,
probably in the Sweaty Betties archives of 2014 or 13. I don't know.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But please let everybody know why you chose to stop competing, what that did for you mentally, emotionally, physically, and then the aftermath, which is what we're going to talk about, metabolic damage and that kind of stuff.
I mean, there were a couple reasons I chose to stop competing. One, my body kind of chose for me. That was.
And what do you mean by that, though?
So, I think during the last year, it was right before my last competition. I was really struggling with my weight, rebounding, and I was doing everything my coach told me to. Like I said, I was like the best student. Like, I wanted to make sure that I was listening to my coach and weighing everything, and my body wasn't responding. It was like I should have dropped 2 or 3 pounds and I was staying the same or even gaining.
Yeah.
And so I was doing 2 hours of cardio, 3 hours of cardio, like 3 or 4 hours at the gym, where I would do hour in the cardio, an hour of lifting, another hour of cardio, and I'm just like literally killing myself.
Yeah.
And then get up the next morning, get on the scale, and I'm up 3 pounds, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So
you feel like you've lost control.
Totally.
Like, so a formula that worked for sure before, like, and for me, it's like you put in the work, you see the results. And when that doesn't start happening, you're like, what the F is going on?
Totally. And I remember going to doctors, and he's like,
I went too.
He was like, well, you just need to eat less and exercise more. And I was like,
Nope.
I'm about to murder you because you have no... I'm like, I can tell you everything that's been in my mouth for the last 7 years.
Yeah,
I'm like, I can tell you how many times I've had anything not what's on this list, which was like September 2011, or, you know, like I could name dates of knowing when I ate off plan because it was that irregular.
Yeah.
So when he said eat less to exercise more, I'm like, I cannot exercise more than what I'm already doing.
No.
I go to the gym more than anybody you know.
Yeah.
I practically live there. And I was a trainer, so I did live there.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I'm eating so clean. I think I was down to like eating 900 calories a day.
Gosh.
And exercising 2 to 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And so looking back, I'm like, well, duh, your body was like, screw you.
Yeah. I remember being so vanity driven.
Yes.
Like all I cared about was how I looked. And I was such a different Cassey back then.
Yeah.
Like behind the scenes, behind even when we met, like I would just be angry all the time. And I would look in the mirror and always think I was fat. Like it's never good enough.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because one thing I remember doing, and I don't do this ever now, every time I went to a bathroom, like a public bathroom, I would like pull my shirt up and like look at my abs. It was almost like I had to make sure they were still there, because I was always like, I didn't want to make sure they were still there. I'm like, they're not going anywhere. I literally can't think of the last time I walked into the bathroom to look at my stomach. That's so silly. But I was so obsessed. I constantly had to look, or like look at my shoulders, or like just check like my physique was right. You know, like you walk by a mirror and you're like, oh, okay, just making sure.
Right. Which I still walk by like window shops and be like, oh, do I look good?
No, totally. I mean, that's normal.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was like an obsessive way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like just in so many like competitors, obviously from Quest, like it's just a part of like the culture of the people like, oh, I cheat on Quest bars. And it's like the whole point is that Quest bars aren't a cheat, not that it is a cheat.
Right.
And having seen it, like that was the one thing, like I've worked very hard I've always wanted arms, like, and that has been my thing.
Yeah.
But I knew that if I competed, I would get obsessed.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I competed, I would spiral, because I'd seen it in so many people.
Yeah.
And so just for my own sanity, it was like, I can't do it for that reason. And so it became about strength instead of looks.
Yeah.
But so many people fall into that category.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you're not competing though, some people, like so many young girls these days, right? Like just... they compare themselves to other people, and then the more you compare yourself, the more you judge. The more you judge, almost the more angry and bitter you get.
Yeah.
How do you break that cycle? Like you're all about mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like how do you break that?
Such a good question, which I don't think has like a single answer, but I think people like Cassey and other influencers are making such an impact by just talking about it and saying, girls, we don't have to compete against each other, and we don't have to compare, and like we can share. Like I love your clothing line and using all kinds of shapes and sizes of bodies, because it's so important to see that there's no one right way or like a certain way to look. And I think that's when we get so dogmatic about how something has to be. It's same with food, whether it's you have to eat vegan or this or 10 almonds. And you just lose perspective. And a big thing that helped me and that shifted me and really got me like looking in myself was after I gained a bunch of weight. And after the last competition, I ended up gaining like 30 pounds. And it was just traumatizing. Was it
fast? The 30
so
pounds?
fast, like within 2 months.
Isn't it like spaghetti and pasta? Is that right?
Oh, okay, yeah. So that story. So I gained about 30 pounds within 2 months, and I was going insane because I was still eating so clean.
Yeah.
I was working out so much. No matter what I did, it was like I would gain like 8 pounds, and then the next day gain and gain and gain. And I was eating clean, and that's what was upsetting, because I remember girls would say, I don't understand. And I remember hearing about metabolic damage, but I thought they were lying. I'm like, you guys are just not following your diet. You're secretly binging. But this time I knew, I'm like, I'm not secretly binging, and I don't know why this is happening. And finally I just was like, I give up. I literally said like, F it. If I'm going to get fat, because I had this idea, I'm like, I'm going to be 200 pounds by the end of next month. So if I'm going to get fat anyway, I might as well enjoy it. Yeah. So I'm just going to stop working out and eat whatever I want. And I remember that day so well. I went to the store. I bought like 2 bags of Reasons, like the chocolate Reasons. I was like, I'm eating all. I just decided I was going to go on a binge fast. And I was going to eat this, and I ate spaghetti at 10 o'clock at night, like carbs at night, right? Like,
Right.
One, I hadn't had spaghetti in probably a decade.
Yeah.
Big no-no, 10 o'clock. Ate spaghetti, and I went to bed. And the next morning, I woke up, and I had lost 3 pounds. And I was like,
What?
this makes no sense. And I just was like, all right, whatever. And I just kind of went off the rocker, quite honestly, a little bit for food. I was just like, I'm eating anything. Like I said, I was like, if I'm getting fat anyway. But as soon as I started eating whatever, my weight gain stopped. Now, I didn't start losing. I just plateaued. But I was like, if I get to eat whatever I want and I don't have to work out 4 hours a day and not gain weight anymore, fine. Like, I didn't want to be fat, but I also didn't want to be killing myself.
It's so crazy because even though I had a short period of that intense working out and super restricting, I too gained weight like a sponge right afterwards. And like I was still eating healthy. And then I would just like anything that I ate, I would just gain until I gained up to my original weight and then more. And the thing was, I was gaining weight while still making videos on YouTube. So everyone saw me slim down. So like, oh my gosh, you look so good. What are you doing? And you feel really prideful. And especially because I'm a fitness instructor, I'm supposed to, quote, look the part, right? I mean, you understand that. And then I start gaining weight and I start having some more rolls. And people were like, what are you doing? Like, do your workouts not work? And they start like questioning my validity. And I feel like that whole part, because I had to gain weight in public, was really hard for me. Like, how did you deal with that?
That's so good because I felt the same. I was a personal trainer, still training. I wasn't doing as many videos on YouTube as you, thank goodness, at the time. But I remember being so embarrassed. I didn't want to do videos. I didn't want to show up on camera. I was super embarrassed because I started to question my own knowledge. Because my clients were all losing weight and I was gaining weight. And I was like, they must think I'm a fraud, or they must think I'm lying and doing something behind their back, like that I'm just binging and stuff.
Right.
And honestly, I don't know how I dealt with it. I just day by day, and I just like cried a lot. And I felt really bad about myself. And I had to make money, so I had to just show up. So it was just like, you just have to show up. And I mean, to be quite honest, there were many times I considered committing suicide.
Oh my gosh.
Because I was so embarrassed. And I was like, I remember even saying a couple times, if I get up to 140 pounds, I'm going to kill myself. And then I hit it. And I was like, shit. If I get up to 150 pounds, I'm going to kill myself. And then I hit it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't.
Did you really mean it, or was it like?
I really meant it, and I hoped that it would keep me from getting there, right? I was like, okay.
So it was almost like a threat to yourself.
Yes, yeah. I was like, okay, if I get 140, I have to kill myself. So I'm like, don't get there. And then when I did, I'm like, it happened it literally happened within days. I was like, well, shoot, that happened too fast. Okay, just don't get to the next. You know, it was like every 10 pounds, just don't get to the next one.
Oh my God.
And then I think my max, and I don't really want to say numbers on this just because to compare sizes and stuff. Right. But when I hit my max, I stopped getting on the scale. I was like, just don't. I think the last time I really, and I had gone off and on, but I stopped weighing myself every day because it just, I would be depressed the rest of the day.
I can so relate to you on that. Like, I haven't stepped on the scale for like a year now, because the last time I stepped on a scale, I thought I had lost maybe 3 pounds because I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then I gained like 4, and it was like above like my comfortable weight, and I lost it. Like, I went on the bed into fetal position, started crying, and then Sam walks in the room. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, I gained weight. And he's like, whatever, it's just a number. I'm like, it's not like that to me. And so I don't step on the scale. I just can't. It like, I know it controls me.
Yeah.
But also, you may have gained muscle, and that's the problem with just the scale, right?
Yeah,
you
it
may
could be
gain
anything.
muscle, so your weight's going up.
And this is the thing, even saying that, though, I remember people say, oh, it's just muscle. I'm like, I don't care. I'm stuck to this number. Mentally, I wanted to see this number. I don't care if it's muscle, fat. I just wanted a certain number. And I think sometimes you just get, I think definitely there's personalities that just get really, stuck on certain things, and whatever it is.
How do you break out of that cycle, though? Because so many people suffer from it, right?
Yeah.
And I know that you're saying, like, we talk about it, but, like, as an individual, like, I can listen to everything.
Yeah.
But depending on what I'm experiencing in that moment, I may not hear it.
Yep.
So is there any like tricks or traits that I can do to myself?
Yeah.
Like, you're really into affirmations.
Yep.
Like, is there like an affirmations that they can tell themselves to kind of break that cycle?
Yeah. Like, ultimately, you have to do the inner work. So what I've really learned with working with women, whether they're binge eating or trying to lose weight or debt or any like problems on the outside, it's always a manifestation of something on the inside. So you ultimately have to figure out, what am I avoiding? What am I trying to compensate for? So there was a lot of things where I had wrapped and another part I think is just wrapping yourself up in an identity. So I think that even though this sucked so bad at the time, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I wrapped my identity up so much in what I looked like and what I could do, and not who I was, meaning like the real Danny, who I really was as a person. So I remember thinking I had to kind of step back and look at it as someone else, right? So if I was like, okay, if Cassey gained 300 pounds, would I still like her? Like, of course, I love Cassey. Like, she's a great person. And I would do this to like all of my friends and loved ones in my head of like, well, okay, if they all of a sudden gained all this weight, would I? And I'm like, no, it wouldn't change how I felt about them. I would be compassionate, or I would feel bad, or I would want to help them, but I would still love them. And so I started to think, so if I gained all this weight, what would people still like about me? Like, would they still, they're not hanging out with me just because I have 6-pack abs. They're not hanging out with me or talking to me just because I eat 6 meals a day. So I had to really look at, what did I have to offer, who I was as a friend, as a person, and start to just like have some self-compassion to who I was and learn who I was. Because I think I was so used to being the fitness model, the trainer, the all of these things, and when I wasn't those things anymore, I didn't know who I was. And I think that's one of the things that's so important, is to just get to know who you are. Because if you wrap up your identity in anything physical or anything at all, whether it's being a mom or being a wife or being a sister or being a whatever, if anything is taken away, like if your kids are gone and you're no longer a mom, then who are you? Or if your sister dies and you're no longer a sister, then who are you? Or if you are a boss and your company disappears, then who are you? So tying yourself to labels is something we naturally do. It's easy to do. But if you tie your identity, like your whole life is wrapped around that, and that's gone, you feel like you lose yourself. And that's where I got to the place of, I was so wrapped up, my identity was wrapped up in my physical self, that I didn't know who I was. And it took a lot of introspection. And so one of the things I did was affirmations. And I think when I was younger, my mom, she used to make us do them. And I always thought it was so stupid. She would make us say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, like 3 times every day. And so I remember thinking, okay, I got to think of some affirmations that will help me. So I would write things down that I didn't quite believe, but I wanted to believe. Like,
oh, that's interesting.
Like, I feel beautiful. I am beautiful. Or things that I wasn't quite yet. Like, I am happy and healthy and lean, which I was really unhappy and I was unhealthy and I was kind of just fluffy. But I would just say these things, and I had done this back when I was paralyzed. And so I knew that it had worked and I kind of jumped into the paralyzed story.
I was going to say, we need to talk about that, because I'm sure some people that don't know your story were like completely shocked right now.
So when I was 23, I was paralyzed. And when I started to walk again, I was reading these affirmations like, I can walk. I am walking easily and effortlessly, and I would say these things over and over and over.
And people told you you'd never walk again.
Yes, right? Yeah. Or they just weren't sure. They were like, we don't know. You probably won't, but we don't know. So I had done those back then, and I thought, I got to do this again, because it worked, and it helped my mindset, and it helped me get out of the funk. So I just wrote a bunch of affirmations about my self-worth, about being beautiful, about being happy, about being healthy, about being a good friend, about being better. And I did that for a long time. And I'm not going to say that happened overnight or helped overnight, but it kept me busy. The other thing it did was, when I stopped working out, because I basically just quit working out, and that took up so much of my time. I mean, I was spending 3-4 hours a day. So now I've got all this extra time.
Job.
I'm like, I have all this extra time. So with extra time could be good or bad. Like, your mind could go down a black hole. You can fill it with drugs. You can fill it with any kind of thing. So I just decided I wanted to try to do a lot of reading, a lot of affirmations, and a lot of just soul searching. So instead of spending an hour doing cardio, I'd spend an hour in books and either trying to look up ways to heal myself physically or mentally. And so I think it comes down to just, it's not one answer, it's not one size fits all, but you have to realize that what's happening on the outside really is a manifestation of what's on the inside. And you got to figure out what is that inside thing that's triggering you.
Wow.
I love it.
Now, obviously, you've struggled with food.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how some girls struggling with EDs can get out from this place where they feel really helpless?
Yeah. I actually was bulimic for years. I started making myself throw up when I was 13.
Wow.
And so I think that competitions tend to also bring in girls with eating disorders because it's a way to like not do that, right? So it's a way to manage. So I think for me, competitions also helped me not be a bulimic because I knew what I could eat. I knew my body was good. I felt safe because I wasn't out of control. And so having like not measuring things and that like made me feel out of control. I think that the same answer goes along with eating disorders is, for me, the eating disorder is not about the food. So it's really not about what's in your kitchen or what you're eating or not eating, whether it's bulimia or anorexia or any range of things. It's, and I've just been doing some more work on this recently because there's just layers. But it's what are you avoiding? And I realized literally last night I had a new realization, was that my family was never allowed to express anger. So I can express sadness. I would be okay with sadness. I was never allowed to express anger. And so I've realized that a lot of women aren't allowed to express anger. Like, it's okay for guys to lash out, but girls don't get to do that. So a lot of times depression is really anger turned inward. So we're angry whether something happened to us, whether there was some kind of abuse or family issues, and you weren't allowed to express it, so you turn the anger inward. It turns into depression. And I think getting to the root, you always have to go back to, like, what is the root? There's, me throwing up didn't just, like, happen overnight. There was lots of little things that led up to that place, to where I did it, and to where it became, to where I felt like it was controlling me. Doing that work is not easy. I think finding a good counselor, I think getting support, I think avoiding, sometimes like I had to avoid mirrors, like I remember putting some paper on my mirror and taping it so I could only see myself from the neck up and do my hair, but I didn't want to see my body because I was so
Is
just
this during the time of bulimia, or is this
that was like
getting
when I was
out
about
of it?
17.
Wow.
Yeah, I like taped the paper so I wouldn't see my body because I just was too obsessed and I was too much. So when I was kind of going through some like eating disorder recovery stuff, and obviously there was layers because I started when I was 13. I was pretty heavily bulimic up until about 21, and then I started getting into fitness, and that kind of saved me from my eating disorder. But so then it was just it was just kind of a new one. It was just a different way. And then when I lost control there and my body was out of control, I went back to that behavior a few times. But I was just like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to be a 30-year-old woman, 40-year-old woman, 50-year-old woman who still deals with this. I was so tired of it. Like, I was so tired of it taking over my life. So I think you have to be aware. You have to know that there's deeper things, and it's going to take I don't want to say it's going to take a long time, but it can take a long time.
Do you think back then, because like social media wasn't really like, obviously it's only been really like not the last few years, but it's kind of, grown so much. Back then, did you feel like alone? Like, I'm the only one going through this? Do you think social media could have helped you? Or is it actually, because we had this discussion whether
I feel like it would have made it worse.
That's the thing, like, depending on...
Because I feel like it would have triggered me and there would have been more ways for me to compare. Like, thank God I didn't have it in high school. Because I've even seen eating disorder blogs and things like that on Tumblr. And I found them as an adult, and I felt even a little triggered as an adult, I can't imagine seeing that when I was younger. It would have probably thrown me into suicide. Honestly, I think it's really hard for girls now. And I think you have to almost just cut yourself off. I think one of the things I did actually that reminds me is shortly after I started to try to get better and I gained all the weight, I started to unfollow people on Instagram and Facebook that would trigger me, whether if I felt bad about myself or if they were just doing too much exercise and it made me want to go to the gym. Like if I felt bad about myself, it wasn't about them. I knew that.
Yep.
But I had to unfollow. So I unfollowed all these fitness models. I unfollowed so many people in the fitness realm because it made me feel like I needed to go to the gym, and I knew that to get healthy, I needed to I needed to rest. Or looking at their bodies, I felt like I needed to be posting that, or I should be there. Like, this is where I was. Like, Danny, you were better than that, and now look at you. And just anything that would make me beat myself up, I unfollowed.
That is really the best thing to do. You take that negativity out of your life.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as an unfollow.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
It was a massive unfollow. I'm like, everyone's gone.
I'm going to touch back on like what you were saying about not having social media back then and eating disorders and stuff. So I don't think I've told like fans this before, but when I was much younger, like in my tweens or something, I explored both anorexia and bulimia.
Yeah.
So I used to like Google, or was Google around Yahoo? I don't know.
Yeah,
What
it was
around?
Alta Vista.
Yeah, one of those guys. I would, like how to not eat or how to not get fat or something. And you're like 12 or 13. And I came across these forums where girls would share tips on how to not get hungry.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been in those, but like some of them would post pictures of like dirty toilets or like smushed insects or something. They're like, here, just like look at these before you want to eat and you're going to lose your appetite.
Right.
I remember reading that, and then I also was like, I don't know, I'm like really hungry, so I don't think this anorexic thing's gonna work. I tried it for like a day, and then I was like, maybe bulimia, like at least I can eat. Then I just throw it up. It's not a big deal. I like tried like picking at the back of my throat, and I was like, I really don't like this, and I started crying. I was like, I'm just gonna have to find a different way. But like, I'm gonna be honest, like I have always wanted to be thin, and I've always wanted to look like these other girls who look so beautiful in magazine covers or, things like that. Yep. But I feel like it's something that a lot of girls go through. They just want to look pretty, and I hope it's for themselves and not for anyone else.
Yeah. Problem is, it's probably not, right? Most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I learned about bulimia on a talk show. I don't know which one. But I didn't know what it was. But there was some talk show and they were telling about it. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
And that's the worry. I'm talking about it. How do you prevent that from happening?
I don't think you can. I mean, I don't think you can. It's so big now. But I think how you can prevent it from happening is like you can't prevent people from seeing it or hearing about it. But we need to start with just teaching our girls that their worth is so much more than their looks.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like, it comes down to self-worthiness. And that's why I said, like, your identity. If you don't have an identity, you start to look for it in other places. So whether it's your body, whether it's piercing your face, whether it's tattoos or your hair, like you start to look for identity. And that's why I think this happens a lot in the teenage years, is because you're searching for that identity. And if we start with our young girls and just remind them of how beautiful they are, and that has nothing to do with their actual look, and they're just beautiful as they are because they are, and they don't need to be beautiful in a certain prescribed way, like blonde hair, blue eyes, or long legs, or big ass, or no ass, or whatever is the trend of the bodies at the time.
Exactly. It's a trend.
It's so a trend.
I
remember my booty, man, I didn't know I was on trend 10 years ago because
we were just talking about butt implants.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was like, I remember people would make comments about my butt and I wanted nothing more than to have like zero ass. And now I'm like, oh, I was ahead of my time with the trend.
And then now people are just like, Cassey, you have a flat butt. You have no butt.
Right. I would have loved, I remember being obsessed with wanting to have no butt,
that
just
crazy.
Nothing. And now it's like, okay.
I think it's so important to talk about this because it is a trend. It's just like, it's like fashion. It goes in and out based on who's the hottest girl at that time.
Totally.
For whatever they've done. And right now it's the Kardashians and the Jenners.
Yeah.
So.
And it used to be, I mean, for us, I think it was really thin. I mean, I remember girls
like Christina
in school,
Aguilera style.
Yeah,
Britney
I remember
Spears.
I wanted to just have just skinny legs. And like I wanted to just have stick legs. And now I'm like, that's not in trend. That's not in fashion.
Oh
like,
gosh.
it's
in fashion, right?
Kim Kardashian doesn't have skinny stick legs.
Well, and the thing is, like, you can't just buy and throw away your body like you do with clothing. So it's such a problem that people all of a sudden and the whole society is just like, this is what's in now. This is hot, and then people will shame you if you don't look like that. I get it all the time, and it's girls doing it to each other. Yeah, that's the worst part.
It is. I think too, you have to realize like you are given your set of genes and your body, and it's only going to, you can make yourself a better version of yourself, but you can't make yourself someone different.
Exactly.
There's like this meme, I think there's a rhinoceros on a treadmill and it's got a picture of a unicorn like as motivation.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And it's like motivation, but it's like, but you're a rhinoceros, you won't be a unicorn. But it's like, you know, if you run long enough, you're going to be this person. It's like me sitting here and going like, I'm trying to be Asian like Cassey, and so I dye my hair black and put in like contacts. And I'm like, you know, it's just, you try to be something that you're not. It's like impossible. Or if I'm trying to be black, I can't change the color of my skin. There's certain things that I cannot change about my body, whether it's my waist size. I mean, there's certain things you can change, but your
can
only
it is what it is.
Your build is what your build is your build. Your skin color is your skin color. There's just certain things that you can't. So
it's just about finding the way to find the best potential of yourself.
Totally.
And like owning that. Yeah. And knowing that you worked your hardest to get there. Totally. And that makes you who you are.
Yeah.
It's not your looks. And I feel like we need to talk about that. Like we need to constantly say that, because no matter how much we say it, everyone always complains about themselves when they look in the mirror and they're comparing themselves to another girl or another IG star or something like that. And we were talking about this the other day, but like sometimes people will post like makeupless selfies or something like, just woke up like this, but like, who knows what's like what you did, and like
the fake eyelashes.
Yeah. And it's just like everyone has a little bit of celebrity and a little bit of power now. We all just really need to be so socially responsible about that. And if you're gonna post a makeupless selfie and say just woke up like this, but you know you have fake eyelashes on, lip plumpers and stuff, like you're gonna steer these young girls in a very wrong direction. They're gonna feel bad about themselves, and that's not okay.
No, I think you're so right. Like, it's a responsibility as an influencer to, and this is the thing, I guess we get to choose, but I believe that it's our responsibility.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I believe it's our responsibility, because you have a platform. You've been given a platform. You've been given influence for whatever reason. There's so many people who want to be a YouTube star or who want to have an audience and nobody pays attention to them. I have a course called Social Academy, and we have people in there who like wanted to do what I do and what Cassey does, and they just don't have it. You know, people just don't follow them. And so when you are given, and I really believe that you're given that as a gift, that it is a responsibility to, if you know something, to share it. So if you've learned something, like, you know, you did your competition and you shared that, and at the time it was fine. And then you learned a little bit more and you're like, okay, if you know better, then do better. You know, if you learn something to help you, it's your responsibility to help. And I think like the more we're given, the more we are required to share. And it's, as an influencer, as a person who other people look up to, whether they look up to for your physical ability, your looks, whatever, I think it is our responsibility to have the conversation and also to let our audience know that we're human, but not to gloss over it and not to, it's so tricky. It's so tricky.
But do you think that, and this goes to the both of you, knowing now what you know, if somebody had told you back then, look, you're going to mess up your metabolism, like this is going to happen, you're going to have... So I've had digestive issues purely because I've had a restricted diet, and then I was getting sick a lot. And in getting sick a lot, I was taking antibiotics. So over a period of like 10 years, it completely destroyed my gut biome. And I got a stomach flu one day, and then it wrecked me so badly I could barely eat. And so I've been on a journey for the last 2 years of trying to build back my gut biome. Like I literally couldn't even have like pepper on my food. It gave me so many bad cramps. I almost had to go to hospital. And I just think like if I went back and told myself that, I wouldn't have believed it, or I wouldn't have paid attention. Would you have, do you think?
I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. And I think sometimes you do have to go through it. Like, if somebody told me that this would happen, because I had vaguely heard of people like gaining weight after, and I'd seen, actually, I knew a couple pros, IFBB pros in the competition scene, where I met them after, and they did not look like they looked on stage. And I remember thinking, and it just was that judgmental side of, I'm not going to turn out like that. Like, they must have you just assumed that they let themselves go, they started binging, and I was like, no, I have more discipline and more, I don't know, better habits than them. So I didn't think it could happen to me. However, I think that even though it might not stop someone, telling somebody now, it might help them get through it faster.
That's interesting.
You know, I think for me it took probably 3 years to really get through it all. So if I could take somebody like from one competition to get through it in a year instead of 3 or 4 years or longer, then that would make me feel like I'm doing the right thing. And also, it's for the people who've already gone through it and they're looking for answers now. So I still, like, I did a YouTube video in 2012 or 13 maybe, literally got a message 2 days ago. She's like, hey, I'm so glad I found your video that someone else went through this. Please tell me you're through it now. Like, are you okay? And I get these messages literally still weekly. So people just want to know, is there a way out? And can I get through this? And they're just happy that they're not alone. So,
do you think you would have the same?
Yeah, I think when you want something so bad, you're just going to do it. And because I grew up as a chubby kid, having thinness or having leanness was never under my control. So I thought, for once in my life, I'm going to eat super clean. I'm going to restrict. I'm going to work out really hard. And let's see how far I can push myself. And I just wanted that so bad. So I think even if someone told me you may hit metabolic damage or whatever, I'd be like, okay, well, it's a risk I'm willing to take. And, you know, it happened and it was horrible. It took me a couple years to get out of it. And same thing with you. I kept gaining weight no matter what I ate. And then when I ate pizza, I would lose weight and be like, I'm really confused. Then I stopped working out for a while. But what got me was like, Cassey, you can't stop working out because you're a fitness instructor. So I was filming like a fat burn video for YouTube, and it was only like 6 minutes, and I was like out of breath. And that moment I was like, you need to figure this stuff out because you are a fitness instructor and you need to be fit no matter what you look like. And what ended up helping me was I started doing different activities. I started dancing again. I started just eating without feeling guilty, which for me was a huge thing. Like I used to look at apples and think they would make me fat, and I had this horrible mentality around it. But once I broke out of food jail, which did take about 2 years, being able to eat freely was just like the most freeing feeling ever. I can't even really explain it, but it takes time, and you have to free yourself from that jail. No one else can take you out of there.
I love that you said that you started doing other things too. That was something like I said, I had all this extra time. So besides reading I would just go on walks because I knew I couldn't do anything hard. I remember going to the gym and lifting up 5 pounds, and it was so heavy, and I just and being out of breath, I get on the stairs and I would stop every 2 minutes catching my breath. I'm like, I can't do this. And so just other ways to be active. So I would just go on hikes and go on walks and maybe ride a bike, like do things more casually. So I felt like I was doing something, but not super intense and not in the gym and not with all the mirrors and all of that stuff. So just finding more activities and just finding myself through that, dancing.
And just doing things that make you happy, regardless of if you're going to gain or lose or whatever.
I want to ask you, because this was really hard for me with the food stuff. How did you go about doing it? Like, did you just throw all the rules out the window and go on a binge fest for a while? Or did you just decide to stop looking at, stop reading the backs of labels? How did you go about it? And then did you just sit with being uncomfortable with it? Or how did it? I know it takes time, and I went through layers.
Yeah, for sure. So I was on a diet similar to yours where all I would think about is food and only eat tiny bits at a time. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to eating 2 or 3 meals a day and maybe adding a little bit of quinoa because I was super scared of carbs. And then I started gaining weight, eating healthy like that. And I would keep going, eating that way for a year. And I ballooned back up to my original weight. And then at some point I was like, F this, whatever, just like you. So I started eating everything that my boyfriend could eat. And then my weight started fluctuating, but I was still dealing with guilt. So even though I was enjoying the food at the moment, afterwards I would feel like a failure, fat, all these terrible things. And to get myself out of that, I just had to start doing different activities and find my worth in something else than my body.
Yeah.
And it's hard because as a fitness instructor or a trainer, people judge you on how you look because that is supposed to be a reflection of your health.
Yeah.
But both being in the fitness competition arena, we know that the stuff you see on stage is many times a facade.
Yeah.
And people are taking cutting pills
Drugs.
and tanning and, all this crazy stuff to make you look good for that day. But are you actually really healthy?
Yeah.
So for me, I had to think about what is it going to take for me to find my balance or my harmony again, to find the fun in fitness again, to work for myself and my health and my happiness than for working for the six-pack, which actually never actually came to me. It's just not there. I just never had one, but I had like a couple lines and stuff, and I was happy with that. I just had to realize that I need to live for myself. And if I'm going to be like 15 pounds heavier, but I can run my business and I can do all these things, and then so be it. I'm not a fitness model and I'm not cut out to be that. But food was a hard journey for me. Yeah. And now I can finally say that I'm eating in a way where I eat what I enjoy. Of course, it's still healthy because I love cooking and I love knowing what goes into my body. And I love the feeling that comes out of it when you know you've nourished yourself in the right way.
Yeah.
So, but it did take a couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me too. I remember the first time. So I went on my like little binge fest for a bit, which I felt like crap, and also created some purging again. So I was like, okay, I don't want to go down that road.
Oh, I did go on a binge fest though. I actually used to hide in the pantry at night and just stuff my face with cereal because I was so ashamed.
Yeah.
This is after you competed.
Within the year.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was that I had to do in the dark. Like, it was so shameful.
What is it about the pattern? Is it that you finally have just like cut that cord and it's actually like what's the word, like liberating, and that's where you just almost go on to the complete extreme? Like, what is that? I
think part of it is biology. I think your body honestly is so starved that it just there's these studies, I can't even remember what the study were, but they starved these men like soldiers or something, and they I don't know, like I'm going to mess this up, but they did this study where they starved these men for like 10 days, 12 days, and they were journaling, and the guys would start journaling about food and obsessing about food. And when they got out, they would like eat all of this crazy stuff and binge. And so part of it is just biology. I think that once you've restricted for so long, you're like, your body's just like, give me anything because I need it. And also, I don't know if I'll ever get it again.
That's what it is. I think like I binged because I was like, I'm sneaking out of food jail right now and I'm going to come back in, but I can't have that again. So I was like, get as much as you can right now while nobody sees you. Because I felt like a criminal.
Totally.
It's the weirdest thing.
I remember buying stuff and then going and just eating in my car and like throwing it out before I got home. Just like doing these hidden...
These secret things, but who are you hiding from? Like yourself?
Right.
It's so weird.
Right. It's like you didn't want people to see that you... So, I had this... I remember eating around clients and they're like, oh, you eat pizza? And then I would feel guilty about that. So I would eat super clean in front of people. And then behind their back or in the car or wherever, I would eat this other stuff because I wanted it. And my body was like, have it. But I remember I made a conscious choice to stop weighing my food. And that was actually one of the hardest things. So the first time I had chicken and I put it in a bowl and I was like, I remember I always used to eat 4 ounces. So I'm like, whoa, how much does this look like? About 4. And I would try to eyeball it. And then I would always eat half a cup of rice. So I would try to eyeball it. And I just kept going, okay, Danny, this is like the first step. Stop measuring and weighing your food. So I remember cringing and being really uncomfortable because I didn't know exactly how much, but I also knew in order for me to move on, I had to let that go. Because how could I go to a restaurant and be normal around friends, or how could I just be normal around people if I didn't have my tools all the time? So I had to just start to learn to trust myself. And that was actually one of my affirmations too. I trust myself. I trust myself around food. Trust myself to make the right choices. I trust myself to be okay even if I go off plan or eat something unhealthy. So that was one of my first steps, and I just had to sit with the discomfort. So I think if I give any tip to any girl going through this, is just, it's going to be difficult, like to get out of food jail, like Cassey says. It's going to take some time and it's going to be hard. You're going to have it's more mental than physical.
Yeah, totally.
You're just mentally beating yourself up and questioning, but you just get through it and you just do it day after day after day. And finally, after a couple of weeks, I didn't even think about the scale. I just put food in a bowl, and I didn't even think about how much it should be. I just thought, I'm going to eat as much as I need. And then I started to try to just listen to my body and eat when I'm hungry. And I know at first somebody told me, just eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. And I'm like, I don't even know what that feels like. I like to say that to somebody with an eating disorder, or to say that to somebody who's been on a strict regimen is like, it makes no sense to them. No sense, They're like, I am always hungry.
Yeah, think about food all the time.
Or I never know if I'm full because I eat until I'm like sick because I just fill myself up. So you don't quite know your hunger cues yet. And I was so used to eating on a clock. I'm like, is it time to eat? Like, what do you mean eat when you're hungry? So once I got used to not measuring and weighing, then I went to like just trying to start to feel how much felt like enough. Not how much did I think was enough by weight or looking like, this is a bowl, that's enough for you. It was like, maybe I wanted seconds. Sometimes I would get seconds and thirds. I'm like, okay, now I feel like it's enough. And even today, sometimes I eat a lot and sometimes I don't eat that much. So I just have learned to finally really listen to my body. And that was tricky because I used to beat myself up before if I had seconds or thirds. Like, that's too much, Danny. Well, maybe I worked out a lot and my body needed more. Now maybe I, took a day off and I didn't do much and I'm just not that hungry. Now my body can self-regulate, but it takes time, and it just takes going, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable. I want to measure, like, I'm cringing. I want to, like, just do this, but I'm not going to. Or, like, I'm going to take a bite of that cake. I know I want the whole thing, and if I don't take it, I'm going to go binge on it later when nobody's around. Like, if you're eating with friends. And I remember I'd say no to the desserts.
Yeah.
And then I'd go home after and, like, eat all the other stuff because I wish I had the dessert.
I totally and the dessert would have been less calories, to be honest. Yeah.
So I just go, okay, eat this in front of them. Take a bite or two and just sit with it. Like, be uncomfortable with it. Just sit with it. Like, holy crap, I can't believe I did that. Just do it. Just do it. And literally, it's just this mental, like, you're fighting yourself the whole time. But eventually, this practice becomes just your way of life. And then it's no longer this war. But I don't know. I think you have to go through it. I don't know. I had to, but that's why I was asking you. How did you? Because I felt like there were so many uncomfortable moments, but I just made the choice to do it anyway.
Just making that choice and then seeing it through.
Yeah. And then just sitting with it, like all the uncomfortable parts of it.
Yeah.
And maybe see what comes up. Like, why am I so uncomfortable? Why is this? Asking yourself, like, why was that so hard? What am I really, like, worried about? Or maybe, like, did you just have a fight with your mom and that's why all of a sudden you're, like, anxious and you want to eat? Or did you just find out, like, are you embarrassed about something and so now this is why you feel this way? So it was really just, like, sitting with the feelings and going, what is this really about?
Identifying them.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with control.
Yeah.
A lot of times people, myself included, go into eating disorders because you want to have control of what you're eating, how you look. But in the end, the food starts controlling you. And I think this battle you're talking about is you against the food and getting that control back.
Yeah.
Which is, it's scary because you think you can control it. But there's something so emotional. And so, I mean, I used to open the fridge and just stand in front of it and stare blankly at all the food inside and then close it and hope that, because it wasn't time to eat. So, oh gosh. Or look at pantries like over and be like, the same food is here. Like nothing has changed. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
You go back.
For those of you who are listening and can't see Danny, you look the best I've ever seen you.
Thank you.
So she didn't just gain the weight and it stayed there.
Yeah.
You look great.
Thank you. You know, it's so weird. So to tell you about, like, the weight loss, it started to just happen without me trying.
Yeah.
And it happened gradually. So I'd lose like 5 pounds and then I would plateau for a while. And then I'd lose 5 pounds and I'd plateau for a while. And I lost about 25 pounds just without ever trying.
Wow.
Which felt so good because I just started to do things that I enjoyed. I started walking and hiking. And it took about 3 years before I started going back to the gym. And even now, I just barely started going back to the gym maybe a few months ago. And I just look at it different. I go maybe 3 or 4 days a week. I spend less than 45 minutes. I do not do cardio for more than 10 minutes. And then I go on with my life. And I work more on my inner self than on my outer self.
Yeah.
And I think it shows.
I was going to say, it's like that you start with the mind and then it gets reflected in the body.
Yeah. But it took time and I didn't ever try. I just started to try to work more on who I was on the inside than the outside, and it started to show up that way. But yeah, it took some time, and thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's exactly how I healed too.
Yeah.
Focusing on something else that wasn't physical.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, today's been incredible.
I feel
so
like
many knowledge bombs just thrown our way.
So many. I feel like I need to talk to you for 4 more hours, like off the podcast.
Oh, the thing is, we didn't even touch upon like so many things.
I know. We're gonna have to have her back.
Yeah, we'll have you. Like part 2.
Part 2 of Danny J. Yeah, for sure.
Like you've had an incredible life. You've been very open and honest about it, and I just think there's so many people out there that I think we've touched on one tiny aspect of the bigger picture.
Right.
There was one quote that I was very inspired when I was looking through your Instagram that really hit me hard. Like there are just some times where you're feeling very open and something gets you and it like stops you in your tracks and takes your breath away, and I just want to read it because it really hit me.
Yeah.
One of your IG posts, it said, "If this body wasn't mine, would I still hate it?"
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of somewhere to end on this and just like think about that.
Yeah, I think everyone listening to this, please think about that for your day today, and hopefully it helps you see yourself in a better light.
Love it.
Yeah. So Danny, thank you so much for joining us on the Sheroic Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Where can everyone find you online?
So I'm at DannyJ.com everywhere. And actually on Instagram and Facebook, you actually spell out .com.
Oh.
So it's DANNYJDOTCOM. Being a Johnson is hard. There's lots in the world.
Okay.
So, yeah, so DannyJ.com on Instagram is probably the best place. And then you can go to my website. Actually, if you go to DannyJ.com, like actually the period and com, you can download. I actually created, speaking of the mantras, 3 really powerful mantras to help you stop self-sabotaging, whether it's with your success, your career, your relationship with food, or relationships with people. One of them, like I said, I trust myself, is part of a series. And so if you want to get some of those mantras and like affirmations, which helped me so much, you can go to DannyJ.com and get your email and I'll send it to you.
And read this woman's blogs.
Yes.
Your blogs were mind-blowing.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Danny, we always end the episode with a Be Sheroic to the audience. So, you want to join us for that?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to lead us into it.
Okay,
guys, thank you much. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Don't forget to rate and subscribe. And let us know also if you want to see Danny J back, because there is like 5 more things that we got to cover. At least, maybe more like 5 million. So, until then,
Be Sheroic!